With the death of Count Dooku at the hands of Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker, the Jedi rescue the captured Chancellor Palpatine, oblivious to his real intentions. The invisible hand is suddenly rocked by an attack from a Republic cruiser, and as Anakin carries the unconscious Obi Wan, they attempt to leave. But very quickly, the trio are trapped in a ray shield by the Supreme Commander of the Droid Army, General Grievous. Guided to the bridge of his ship, Grievous was relishing the additions to his lightsaber collection, but the astromech droid R2-D2 created a diversion, allowing the Jedi to regain their lightsabers and fight their way through Grievous' station droids, as the General takes his usual way out through an escape pod. Without any escape pods left, Anakin wrestles control of the ship as it freefalls to Coruscant. With half of the ship remaining, emergency firespeeders were desperately trying to put out the raging inferno, until the ship finally came to a stop with the help of an impact with the control tower. As those aboard sighed in relief that they were alive, Obi Wan remarked that this was another happy landing. But what if it was in fact a sad landing? What would happen to Obi Wan? As you'll discover, the sad landing will have consequences for those outside of the dreadnought. As Anakin wrestled control over the ship, Obi Wan looks back to the litany of escape pods with which Grievous had used to escape. There would be time to deal with the cyborg later. The more pressing issue at hand was Anakin at the helm of a free-falling half of a ship. Not that he didn't trust Anakin's immense piloting skills, but Obi-Wan was reticent about flying in general. However, as Anakin struggled with the controls of the crumbling half of the ship, the situation was becoming severe, and Obi-Wan sensed something was wrong in the Force. But before he could do anything, he was too late. The ship had not maintained an adequate angle of approach, and had nosedived into the ground, despite Anakin's best efforts. The three human passengers lay slumped on the controls of the ship, entangled in amongst the debris, but R2-D2 used his rocket boosters to find a way out via a small hole in the roof, and speeds off to the temple. Behind him, the emergency firespeeders are attempting to put out the inferno, as the three humans remain stuck inside. Fortunately for R2-D2, the Jedi Temple had already been put on alert, and most of the Council intercepted R2-D2 before he reached the temple. Grandmaster Yoda rushed towards the wreckage at speed, and alongside several other Jedi Masters, they used the Force to turn the wreckage upside down, giving space for the Jedi to cut their lightsabers through the ship, and for Mace Windu to use his Shatterpoint ability to retrieve the unconscious trio. Anakin and Obi-Wan are rushed off to the halls of healing in the Jedi Temple, whereas Palpatine is taken to the Coruscant medical facility. However, as Palpatine is being stretchered away, the clones notice something unusual, as the Supreme Chancellor begins to emit sparks and energy from his body, with some of his wounds beginning to lighten in their colour. Carrying him with even greater speed, he is left in the hands of the medical droids and the medics. Upon closer examination, something odd is happening to his internal organs. The organs appear to be healing themselves, and not just the wounds. This was the characteristic of a powerful Force sensitive. The medics looked at Palpatine's medical records, but they failed to show anything significant. They were even vague. This was now out of their hands. The medics transport Palpatine to the temple, but as they passed the original wreckage, the Sith Lord's eyes began to flicker. Palpatine sensed the situation, and ensuring no other people were around him, he uses the Force to push away the medics, and staggering to his feet, he heads back to his office, reapplying his Force stealth which he had lost in his moments of unconsciousness. He thought he could trust the legendary flying skills of Anakin Skywalker, but clearly he had been mistaken. Perhaps he was not worthy of becoming his future apprentice, as it had required some intense Sith meditation to focus on the pain to his body in order to heal his wounds. Anakin's failure meant Palpatine would now need to eliminate any loose ends. Back in the halls of healing, news of Palpatine's miraculous recovery had not reached their ears, as they were now tending to two of their most esteemed members. Placing them in Bacta tanks to accelerate their healing process, the duo were fortunate that the front of their ship had taken most of the impact. As a result, they were released the following morning and summoned to the Jedi Council to give a summary of the events. It was then that the Council remembered the whole purpose of the mission, to rescue the Chancellor. The Council had made some mistakes recently, but this surpassed them all for stupidity. Quickly, Anakin and Obi-Wan head to the Coruscant medical facility, but to their surprise, they found Palpatine was absent. Heading to his office, the Chancellor was sitting there as if nothing had happened, much to the suspicions of Obi-Wan. Less than a day ago, the Chancellor had been seen unconscious and in a sea of his own blood. Even though Coruscant had some of the most advanced medical facilities in the galaxy, this was beyond their capabilities. Yoda asks Palpatine to come to the Jedi Halls of Healing for a second check, but he disagreed, stating that the opinion of the medics at Coruscant's medical facility should be enough for the Jedi. The hologram of the Jedi Grand Master departed with disappointment, and Palpatine gathered his needed possessions as it was time to retrace his steps and avoid the prying eyes of the Jedi. Asking a member of his Coruscant guard to prepare his speeder, he very quickly headed for the smouldering wreckage with Masamida. The secret Sith Lord discreetly tracked the trail of his own blood and used special equipment to vanish all of the evidence before he hears the calling of his name. The clone medics who had carried him had returned to the scene, and Palpatine had to think quickly, utilising a bout of forced persuasion to make them forget about his health, and they walked away. Palpatine now had to focus upon destroying the Jedi. Back in the Jedi Council Tower, the Jedi Masters along with Anakin Skywalker discussed what had happened aboard the Invisible Hand, and along with Palpatine's miraculous recovery, Mace Windu declared that the Chancellor was less innocent than he seemed. Anakin argued that Palpatine was not capable of such an act, but he was blinded by his close ties to the old man. The Jedi Knight stomped out and headed for Padme's apartment, where she announced her pregnancy, much to his delight. With Anakin out of the way, the Jedi Council go back to the scene of the crash, not realising that Palpatine had been one step ahead of them in covering his evidence. The Jedi, however, do find one thing, that being a number of scorch marks far away from the wreckage, pointing towards either a lightsaber or an uncontrolled use of the Force. With Quinlan Vos off planet from his loss on Seleucamine, the Jedi have difficulty in tracing these pieces of evidence, and even worse, Palpatine is watching from his office with a devious smile. The Sith Lord turned to hear a knock on his door, and the timing was perfect as Anakin Skywalker entered. From Anakin's conflicting demeanour, Palpatine is able to sense that the Council were growing suspicious of him, and decides to appeal to Anakin's hatred for the Council members, including their failure to present him with the rank of Master. Whilst Anakin agrees he should be made a Master, he understands their hesitancy, as he had almost killed both Palpatine and Obi Wan, and the Sith Lord is having serious doubts about choosing Anakin to be his apprentice. Even if he could turn to the dark side, he would be as Plagueis had predicted in destroying the Sith, for he was too embroidered in the light. Summoning General Grievous' holographic figure from across the galaxy on Utapau, he instructed the droid general to be prepared to attack the Jedi, and to not fail him again. Following the discussion with Grievous, Palpatine next informs the Jedi Council of Grievous' location, aiming to lure as many of them as possible out of Coruscant, and begin to purge the Jedi Temple. The plan partially works, as Obi Wan is nominated to go to Utapau and guide the 212th Battalion to defeat Grievous. However, as Palpatine watched Obi Wan go to his cruiser, the doors to his office slide open, revealing almost the whole Jedi Council. After hearing that Palpatine had known the location of Grievous, even Anakin had to admit that something was not right with Palpatine. As Mace Windu entered, Palpatine did not turn around in his chair and heard numerous lightsabers ignite. Executing Order 66, the Jedi stared in confusion before hearing rapid footsteps from all directions as the clones entered the building, and Yoda sensed their betrayal. Having not travelled to reinforce the Wookiees on Kashyyyk, Yoda was determined to make his presence count and flew towards Palpatine, who blocked the lightsaber in time. The other Jedi soon joined the fight, with a number killed by the arriving clone troopers, and Palpatine's cackles grew louder with every strike. The Jedi were struggling until different footsteps entered the office. Anakin Skywalker had been considering helping Obi Wan on Utapau, but felt the Force calling to him from Palpatine's office. With his blade already ignited, Anakin leapt at the Sith Lord, scraping the ceiling, and vertically cut his body into two. Although it had cost many Jedi, at least Obi Wan had survived, and Anakin's poor landing was not as costly as it could have been. That is it for What If Obi Wan Had a Sad Landing. If you enjoyed this, please like this video, turn on that notification bell, click that subscribe button for more tips, as well as on my other channel What If Films. And as always, leave a comment on what if you'd all like to see next, and how I can improve my videos. Thank you all very much for watching, and see you next time.